All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our another day of 12 beers of Christmas. Uh, we've got a bunch of people joining us from all over. I'm Jonathan, and we've got Tom. Hey, Tom.
Hey, how's it going, man? How are you all
Good.
doing?
Hey,
Good, good,
I'm
good.
doing good. It's a new
Good.
year. New year, new
It
me.
is New
I
Year.
think I'm going to say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, New
I'm
Year.
trying
Yeah,
trying to come up with a good slogan this year, like 2024, like I don't know. Let's have some more. I don't know. That's all I've got.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know. It feels like I haven't seen everybody in the chat since last year, though. I feel like it's been a long time. Yeah.
Dude, I know. I actually haven't drank since last year. You know.
Uh, Neither have I. And the funny thing is, as I was getting ready for the stream tonight, I was like, "Damn, I'm kind of thirsty," and I was about to crack the beer, and I realized, "Oh wait, I got to crack that on camera here." So yeah, yeah, absolutely. Happy New Year! Just like we Happy New Year for that. That's
Yeah,
definitely a
that's
good
a thing.
choice. I mean,
That's yeah.
yeah, I mean, we do Happy Hanukkah. I mean, why can't we
Right.
do Happy New Year?
Well, and honestly, especially for the beer we're gonna have tonight, specifically a Happy New Year,
Yeah,
which is
absolutely,
perfect.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So let's go. Let's crack it.
Let's crack
This
it.
is
I'm
the yeah. This is the trader from Trader IPA from Uinta in Salt Lake City. Alrighty, let's go. Let's make this pour. Look, oh, it's the first pour of beer this year. Going to be a perfect one. We're doing this pretty good. We're not like it's not bubbling over. We're almost there, ready to turn that 45 degrees straight up and get some nice beer head going on. Oh, that's right. Oh, look at that.
I
I
failed.
even have whoa. Oh, it's that reflection. I'm trying to get show off the City Brew Tours logo, but yeah,
This was
yeah.
the trick I learned. Yeah, just like the all the Instagrammers.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you think I could be an influencer, Jonathan?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know. I being on day eight.
Eight.
See, yeah,
Day
day
eight.
eight. That's 7 days in a row. I don't know how that happens on a regular basis. I think I think my what God, I can't even think of the name of it now. I can't think of my what is it, Jonathan? Tell me what it is. What's
Instagram
influencer? It's
influencer.
influencer. My influencer career wouldn't last, more than 10 minutes.
No, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So,
mean,
yeah, I don't know
ooh,
how they do it. Don't know how they do it. All right, let's kick this off. Let's see that.
okay.
Smells really good.
Cheers.
All right. The link to the Zoom meeting wasn't on the web page today. Oh my gosh,
Oh.
we need to slap the marketing people around a little bit. K-Fan, that's the best use of dry January ever, for sure. Dry beers only. Yeah, this is nice. This is nice and crisp, and this
Mm,
is only 5%.
5%. Exactly. Yeah.
That's nice and sessionable. I like the color. I always like a nice kind of
And it's like
golden brownish color for
I
sure.
know it
Give
looks
that malt
way
character.
it looks way darker on my camera, but it is nice and golden.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really nice.
So, what do you know about Salt Lake City, Jonathan?
So they have this really big lake that's salty.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, so beer in Salt Lake City is an interesting history. I mean, Uinta's been around since 93, and so
Yep.
they're one of the older ones, but everything else has really been kicking off since about 2019 when they actually upped the law that you can still actually legally brew beer over 3.2%. But there's a caveat to that, is that anyone can brew beer over 5%. However, anything over 5 is state regulated. And so
Mm,
if it's going to be retail, it has to go through the state operated liquor stores. But if a brewery's going to have it, then there's going to be extra permits and regulations implemented by the state. But also, you're not going to have, so this one right at 5%, perfectly fine. Anything over this, you're not going to be able to get this on draft. You're going to have to get it out of a can because, again, that retail and that regulation on those over 5%, even if it's like 5.4, those have to go through all those state regulations. And they're one of the only 17 states that still has state regulated liquor laws.
Really?
It's federally regulated. Everyone else has, either by the state itself or are state individual or just basically can kind of do what they want, but they are one of the 17 states that does have still operates under the federally mandated laws. But they were I think they were 36th to actually sign the amendment to allow alcohol after prohibition. So and that was in 33. So they've been making alcohol, liquor, all kinds of beverages for a very long time. And with it even being legal to homebrew, that's where, because of that regulation of that percentage, homebrewing became popular. And then you get breweries like Uinta kind of really perfecting these sessionable, these lower ABVs, lighter beers. And now you can have fun and go higher, but there's always, you got those workarounds that you kind of got to work with.
Well, yeah. I mean, so I've given tours at Uinta, gone down to Salt Lake City and run a few tours there. And in talking with the brewers and the folks that work there, they're always trying to push the boundaries. They're always trying to get that little extra in there for the rest of the folks because uh, it's not weird, but I guess it makes sense to pretty much anyone who runs a liquor commission or whatever. But they can pour beers over 5%. It just has to
Yeah.
come out of a can rather than
Yeah.
out of a tap.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's because you could run out of cans at some point, but yeah, they they can pretty much do whatever they want if they skirt some things here and there. See
Yeah.
someone mentioning the can art. The can is definitely very beautiful and interesting. Salt Lake City, a lot of murals in that town.
Yeah.
Everywhere you turn, you're seeing a lot of art just on the sides of the streets and so forth. It's a pretty interesting town. You wouldn't think that considering the history of Salt Lake City that it would be hip, but I don't know. It kind of rivals some of the bigger cities along the way for sure, and then also has a great outdoor scene on top of
Yeah.
it. You went to their whole mantra was, getting beer to people who go out and do Dawn Patrol ski tours, do rock climbing and scaling canyon walls, camping under the stars. It's like they're big on conserving water as well. They have it's a part of their mission as well as how they use water, but they have people drinking beer so people don't have to drink water along in those activities as well. So always a good excuse along the way. So tell me what you think about session IPAs versus regular IPAs. What are some of the characteristics that you've seen? I know it's not necessarily recognized by the BJCP and stuff like that, but
which it may be one day. The problem with, we love the BJCP. It's what gives us all the categories. Sometimes they take their time in doing updates. I think the last update was in 2021, so a couple years ago. And so things like session IPAs and other styles that the Midwest IPA, I know that's like a big one that we've been hearing a lot. And we've even drank them together. And so those are styles that may come up in the next iteration, but the session IPA just currently falls under the specialty IPA category. So you have
Okay.
your IPAs, you have your American IPAs, your specialty IPAs, your English IPAs as well. And the main thing with all of them is that they recognize that IPAs, obviously not in India, and they might not necessarily be pale, but they are ales, and they all have a bittering, hoppy forward characteristic. Now, with your American IPAs, your English IPAs, we're going to set those aside for now because that's not what we're having. With your specialty IPAs, that's going to be your session, your standards, or your doubles. And so your sessions are going to be anything from 3 to 5%. And that's what we're having today. That can be New England, that can be West Coast, doesn't really matter. We're not really getting into those. We're just getting into lower hop profile, lighter flavor, lower ABV. I always like to say so we can have more than one in a session. And
Hmm.
there's literally no category as to what a session is. It's usually how many you can drink in an hour or two. So the more you can drink in an hour, the more sessionable it is.
Hmm.
Um, but then also within that specialty category, specialty IPAs, you have your ryes, your black IPAs, brown IPAs, red IPAs. So that's where, as long as it's under that 5%, it'll be in that sessionable IPA category. Obviously, your standards is going to be that 5 to 7, and then anything up from there is going to be your doubles as well. But this one hits all the notes of a specialty or session IPA, low ABV, light, strong aroma, which means that they're going to be adding those late hop additions, so you get that low bitterness. Uh, I'm sure there's some dry hopping going on in this as
Yeah.
well, because you have a lot of that. There's also a lot of really good lacing, but not too much. So definitely just from appearance, you can tell that that's going to be that lower ABV right away. And you're not going to get that a lot of those consumable sugars, that sweetness out of it.
It's still pretty chewy, even for a lower
Yeah.
ABV. Still getting a lot of that characteristic of an IPA that still kind of lingers and sticks around with you. Doesn't really punch you in the face that much. I
No.
mean, I use that a lot for my when I describe beers. This, there are some IPAs, some West Coast IPAs, obviously that really come with up. I mean, there's an element of it there, but it feels like the punch has been pulled a little bit
Yeah.
for me. I would say definitely could do a number of these. Um, in a given night. That's for sure. It'd just be a matter of whether my stomach could
Well, yeah.
handle all the liquid, right? So,
Yeah. And well, that's where I love on the can, it does say drink cold.
mhm.
Because this is definitely going to be one of those that you want to have this ice cold, hot summer day. Just like the can art, hiking through a canyon,
Mhm.
going on those trails, going in that hot summer. This is going to be your beer for that. Still have that bitterness in there, but it's going to definitely be a lot more refreshing on a really nice hot summer. Have this
Mhm.
as cold as possible. Um,
I love how they let's see. There we go. I love how they have temperature gauges of each of the different ingredients
yeah,
on there without anything else to like measure. I guess if you had another can of Uinta, you could see, okay, what does this look like against that? But that's it's kind of like on websites when people are like touting their abilities like all the way up to 100. We're amazing. But this one, I mean, this one looks pretty well balanced based on their charting of it for sure. I
yeah,
I would agree that the body of it, about right in the middle. The color a
yeah,
little bit on the darker side
yeah,
for that. Um, more hops than malt. So
yeah.
yeah,
And
if you ever get
technically,
go ahead.
I would say technically this one does say that it is about 42 IBUs. So
Hmm.
definitely a little bit on the lower end, which if any of our CBTBC know that, IBUs versus perceived bitterness, there's a whole argument there, but definitely lower on the IBUs. But I am getting a little bit of that resiny that's lingering a bit with that finish as well. And I do
Yeah,
agree. There's a few people, Russell's agreeing, a few others, that even though it's reading at that 42, that it does
mhm.
feel a little bit more of a punch.
Yeah, I think it's obviously comes down to the malt bill that comes that where those IBUs come across more.
Yeah.
IBU has always been a misnomer as
Oh
far
yeah.
as like you could have this be 42 IBU in a stout and it would still be super sweet. You wouldn't even have
Yeah.
any understanding of that. Yeah, people are talking about the Rose Bowl in this. I have to say it feels really weird still to me to not have a Pac-10 or Pac-12 team going up against a Big Ten team. Glad. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see if Alabama can still lose, which would be my favorite thing to happen. Not a big fan of either team, but definitely more of a fan of the Wolverines than Alabama. Um,
Is that sports, Tom?
oh, is it over? It's yes, it's sports. Oh,
Oh,
there
okay.
is a final. I'm looking at it and seeing that it went into OT now. I thought it was still happening. They're still going back and forth. Weird OT rules where everybody gets a chance to score, which is not weird, probably most things, but I know weird to you, Jonathan.
It's
Sports
all
ball,
sports
all
ball
over.
to me. It's all sports
Yeah,
ball
yeah.
to me.
So you didn't watch the NHL Winter Classic where my Kraken shut out the Golden Knights, the Stanley Cup champions.
I did not. But I
All right.
but I do know NHL. Ever
Yeah.
since was it Super Nintendo's 1996 NHL with Wayne Gretzky,
Mhm.
that's been a fan ever since. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Is that a swingers reference? Did you
Uh
make little
it
Wayne's head
so
bleed?
I started playing it around the time that movie came out. But yeah, it is
Yeah.
a Swingers reference because it was the only game that you could actually get the if you were Wayne Gretzky and you got into a fight, you could make blood go on the ice rink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it was fun. It's fun as a
Absolutely.
kid. It's great.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah. Well, I had a thought that just left my mind.
It's okay.
This
Uh,
maybe this isn't. Maybe I didn't get a sessionable IPA. Maybe I'm already drunk and yeah. Oh well. I mean, I was going to say, Bad Santa and I we have gone to Salt Lake City together
yeah.
and did a little tour around town. I should have brought some pictures. Should have brought some pictures that I took of him doing all the sites. One was out in front of the Delta Center, which is where their basketball team plays, the Jazz. Um, but yeah, a lot of good times were had with Santa and I in Salt Lake City on trips there. Um, but yeah, you didn't watch the Santa stream last night.
I didn't. I didn't. I
I mean,
unfortunately had a very exciting night
mhm,
of working and then coming home and sitting on my couch.
mhm,
Yeah. So that
yeah,
that was yeah. That's and then I heard some fireworks and thought I should go and to the window and then I watched fireworks at midnight and then was like, you know what? It's time to go to bed.
yeah.
This is a good
Our
way to end the evening.
neighbors are they invest heavily in fireworks every Fourth of July and every New Year's. My wife and I have a big sliding glass door that faces away from the street, but where they launch it, it was like strobe lights going on quite crazily at midnight at our place while my dogs hid
Yeah.
underneath the covers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, my cat did the same because they do launch fireworks in our neighborhood, whether they're supposed to. But hey, it's New York, so you can do what you want.
mhm.
Speaking of explosions, though, I am gonna kind of bring up what Kevin was just mentioning about the with the craft beer explosion and the kind of explosion of IPAs hitting the kind of the market. Because I do agree in many, many ways that, and I've talked to other brewers and even individuals that are on committees with the BJCP and in the other areas that the term IPA is very loose and very, what is an IPA? You can go follow recipes But again, you have those American IPAs, English IPAs. If it's a hoppy forward beer, that's an ale yeast, then technically it's an IPA. But there are many, I will kind of hit on that with Kevin, that they are trying to kind of narrow in what it is because it has been so fast and loose for so many years, especially starting in 2013, when the hazy IPA hit the market. Because now, before then, you had what? Stone, Goose Island, you had your West Coast style IPAs that were strong, pine, bitter, with a little bit of
Mhm.
that sweeter, malty kind of color, a little not quite brown, but you had that auburn color to it, that was an IPA. And then you get these hazies and these fruities and citrusy, fruity with some mild bitterness. And then now you have Midwest IPAs and now you have session IPAs. So I've been talking to a lot of individuals and brewers of like, how do you kind of, because it's been such a wide breadth of what an IPA is, how do we kind of bring it back? And a lot of them is they are now using specific words in their descriptions of their beers
Mhm.
of a hoppy pale ale. So now it's a pale ale, but it does have that hoppy characteristic.
Mhm.
You have hoppy lagers. Might not be an IPL, an India Pale
Mhm.
Lager, but it has those hoppy characteristics. And so that's where they're trying to not say everything's an IPA unless it has those very strong hop forward characteristics and flavors. Usually, 3 to 4 hop variations or whatever. Um, so I
Well,
think it's interesting.
even last night's beer, which was a pale ale that was hazy,
Yeah.
versus tonight's beer, which is an IPA. Like, one of the reasons why I put that together in the box the way that I did was to give that comparison between. I mean, maybe it's hard to remember what it was last night versus tonight. Like, maybe those should be drank side by side to see what those differences are, or see what the little nuances that come across are. But a pale ale is definitely different than an IPA. I mean, they're close, they're cousins,
Yeah.
but there is definitely other characteristics that you're trying to shoot for when you make those.
Yeah. And even if you go into on the recipe side, I haven't even been drinking that much, Tom. Geesh.
Mhm.
On the recipe side, obviously an IPA will have more hop additions than a regular pale ale, but on the standard can or description, you won't know that. And so a lot
Mhm.
of times they will taste, and I've had some like hoppier pale ales or even hazy pale ales that have been stronger and bolder than even a session IPA,
Mhm.
which is
Well, let's
always,
talk. Let's talk a little bit about English IPAs versus American IPAs.
Mhm.
I would agree that someone who's drinking an English IPA might not recognize an American IPA at all.
Yeah.
They are very different. I mean, one characteristic that stands out to me in the English IPA is how much flatter it is than an American IPA. It may not be a part of the exact guideline, but it definitely you're not adding carbonation to those English IPAs like you do in the Bright Tank in an
Yeah.
American IPA, that sort of thing. What sort of characteristics do you see between the two styles on that?
So I mean, one of the biggest is also going to be the variation, hop variations.
Mm-hmm.
So if with an English IPA, you're still going to stick with a lot of those more noble hops. So even if they're more Kent Golding, Williamette, you may not be using those specifically, but you're going to have those more well-rounded rather than, using Citra, Simcoe,
Mm-hmm.
that have those bolder, slight citrus or those earthier flavors that you get with that American IPA. So with the English, I always get a little bit more of that well-roundedness. You still get that earthiness to it, but I'm gonna say typically more of those noble hops are going to be
Mm-hmm.
using because again, those are just those are your European hops. So that's kind of for me, because the hop builds or the malt builds can be very similar.
Hmm.
Um, and similar in color, similar in sweetness. You're gonna have probably a little bit of caramel malt, a little bit of you might even get a little Cara in there as well. But for me, it's gonna be specifically that hop build. But as you said, that drierness, the little bit flatter. Also, you are using an English yeast versus an American
Hmm.
yeast. So that's gonna play that part too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
I am going to answer John's question right here as well. An ESB is that the same as an English IPA? And that answer is no. So that's I'm going to do a little history lesson for everybody. I hope you don't mind, Tom.
no, please
So an
let me
ESB,
lean back and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and get my thought
All
hat
right.
on here.
So ESB is an you can call it, it goes back and forth, English special bitter, extra special bitter. But if you go back into the late 17, early 1800s, you're gonna have two main styles of beer in England. And you're gonna have the bitters and the milds. And so if you ever have an English mild, it's gonna be a very light, it's gonna have a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of nuttiness because they're using a slightly roasted malt, but very low bitterness to that. And that is because beer was being drank as one of the main beverages, then they were going to be drinking that for pretty much all day, every day, and along with their teas and coffees and things like that. Now, the ESB or your bitter beers are not bitter as an IPA. The English IPA came out because they wanted to add extra hops for preservation, whether it's for storage on the shelves or just for deliveries to other places as well. But the bitter was just to have enough bitterness to it to be able to stand up to the fattier foods like fish and chips, sausages, bangers, things like that. And so your ESB is gonna have a slight bitterness, but it's not bitter like your IPAs. And so therefore, that's why a lot of places will still call them ESB and not a English bitter, is because people automatically in the modern in the modern consumption, think bitter, think IPA. And it's not a bitter beer by any means. It's just a slight more bitterness to help compete with those fattier foods. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, but the IPA itself was actually originated as records as far back as the 1500s as well.
So we had a question in the Q&A part. I just sent a
Yeah.
link
Okay.
in there as far as answering it to give
Yeah.
you to give Henry kind of a list of that. But let's just go over some of the ones that are on here. So the question was, what brewing companies make IPA similar to the original old style? So the ones that I know off the top of my head and that are on this list are Three Floyds, Six Points. Let's see. What else do we have here in this that I know that I've tried? Um, those might be the only two that I've had. But the other part of this answer, Henry, is it depends on the brewer. Brewers, they like to challenge themselves. They like to dig into certain things. As far as getting them into cans and something that's more easily found, those are the two that I know that can be found kind of in multiple markets across the U.S. But like I've had the Pelican Silver Spot there, a brewery out of Pacific City in Oregon on the beach. So, and I know one of the brewers from there and have had the chance to drink some of their stuff. That's pretty good, but that doesn't make it out of Oregon. But that list there would be probably the best kind of idea along the way. Three Floyds, they're a very well known and very good brewery
Yeah.
as well. So I would definitely think that would be a great place to go along to get that. But yeah, I don't see a lot of English IPAs, and
Mm-mm.
part of the reason for that is the American consumer. I don't want to say they're ignorant, but they like what they like. They like things bubbly, and they like things that are pretty specific. I've had the chance to travel in the UK a few times, and their beer is I mean, I would say it's drastically different than
Yeah.
what we experienced in the US. And to each their own. Like some people really, really love that, and that's those UK beers were a big reason why the American craft beer movement started. Like when at least to the brewers that I've talked to from back in the day, they thought they were going to steal market share from those imports rather than the big brewers who had a stranglehold on everything. And crazy enough, they started to like take away from the Budweisers and that sort of that segment of the world. But originally, it was like you couldn't get an English IPA that wasn't like 2 years old
Yeah.
here. I mean, you'd have to search around and get things. So craft beer was really kind of the answer to how do we drink a different beer than these American macro lagers?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's we got lucky. And the brewers start to challenge themselves. I mean, we've talked about Hair of the Dog in some of our previous live streams this year, and those beers that they're making out of Hair of the Dog, those were like styles no one's ever made. Like a Fred from Hair of the Dog is something that found a really old recipe and went super strong with it. So yeah, it's hard to find, but if you got a good local craft brewery that's kind of small in your neighborhood, my suggestion to you would be to put a little bug in the brewer's ear. Hey, I'd like to try this, and they might just do a pilot system version of it
Yeah.
where they don't have to put a lot of they don't have to do a full 10 barrel batch of things, but they might do a one barrel half barrel session of that. And those things are you know get to know your brewers. Go be repeat customers, and you don't have to be a regular, but I mean, if you go once every couple of weeks, you'd be surprised how many brewers will be like, "Hey, you got any ideas?" Or you can just like, "How about you make this?" And they'll laugh. They'll say, "Oh, a brown doesn't sell in this day and age. We're never going to make a brown." But you never know. The craft brewery that I used to work for, we used to get ideas left and right from our customers. So that would be my suggestion if you want to nail those things down.
And I will say, I'm a little partial to them because they're not too far from me. But here in New York, we have Wild East Brewing, and they specialize in all the European styles. And they even go back to those old methods of doing decoction brewing and double decoction and triple decoction. And they do have some English IPAs, but they're also doing American IPAs, and they're doing everything. So it is a matter of just talking to the brewers, kind of, picking their ear. But also, if you do have a homebrew shop, you don't have to homebrew yourself, but see if they're ever doing like a bottle share, or if there's anything with that of any local homebrew groups. We have locally here, we have the Bruminaries, where every few months all the homebrewers go to one of the breweries and they share all their beer. And if you're lucky enough, you don't have to be part of it, but if you're having beer at that bar or at the brewery, sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, come on over. I've got way too much beer to get through." So you can also learn from them and kind of try, because when there's especially home brewers, we want to try new things. We want to try. So if someone's like, "Hey, have you ever had this?" I'm like, "No, but I'll try it." And we'll see what happens. So that's always fun. And the smaller the system, just as Tom said, the higher chance of them trying something new. There's a couple other brewers that I know that they brew some of their more like accessible beers on larger systems, and then they have a couple other small systems that they'll do things like Gratzers, which are a fruited smoked beer, Lichtenheiners, things that may not be the most knowledgeable beers, whether it's also Kentucky Common, California Commons, but things that are historical beers that they can have fun with as well. So make friends with your local brewers. I think the that's the point of all of this.
Question from the chat. Was the original IPA drink warm?
I have my opinions. What's your opinion? And we'll see if we agree.
So my thought is this. The original IPA came out before refrigeration. So most likely it was drank at room temperature because of that. There is some sort of cold storage, but if you think about how beer is kind of like liquid bread, it doesn't travel very far. It doesn't do that sort of thing. Now, this beer was going all the way around the Horn of Africa to get to India and that sort of thing. Pretty hard to keep it cold. So my hypothesis would be somewhat warm.
I was gonna say if it was served at a pub, then maybe cellar temperature, which would still be warm to our average beer drinker. That's still gonna be 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Maybe a little bit warmer, but generally, yes, it's gonna be much warmer than what we're having right now.
And most of those things came from a cask engine as well, which is gonna be, it's gonna sit in a bladder behind the bar, most likely, and it's gonna get pumped and so forth. But I would say most ale, and that's the other reason why ales were the predominant beer back in those times as well, is because you can only cellar cold storage things in the ground so much to keep them the way where they need to be.
Yep. And that's what birthed so many other variations and hybrid beers of even your Kolsch style ales and things of even eventually being your cream ales and stuff like that as well, of using those yeast at those temperatures that you couldn't do normally.
Absolutely.
Sorry, everyone's just getting all of the nerd stuff. I've been
Well, we determined last night that we're mostly nerds.
Yeah.
Who come to the stream, especially on like a Saturday night. I know it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday night. We're nerds.
Yeah.
We want to dig into that and do that. And that's why I love having a resource like you next to me. I mean, I know a good chunk of stuff, but that brain of yours is, look at the big brain on Jonathan, everyone.
That's just a big head. That's just a big head.
I don't know. We should I don't know. Head wise, I think I got you beat. So I don't know that the size of the head determines how much information can be stored in there.
I don't. I've got nothing.
Next time I'm in New York, we'll you try on one of my hats and we'll see how far down it gets to your. Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else before we jump from tonight?
All right. I'm just double checking the chat real quick. I think everyone's loving the conversations, the history, the science. This is also why I do this, because I also love it, and it's a good time. Also, this beer is very crushable. I also like the word quaffable because it is almost gone in my glass, I'll be honest. But at a 5%, that's easy.
I've never had a stylized beer that I know of.
Yeah. Nah, I've had beer from Anchorage, but not stylized IPAs.
All right. Well,
I think
let's call this one a night. I mean, I don't want to use up all, we've got 4 more nights of this. And Jonathan, you're with me through to the end, right? We're
almost,
yeah. And we've got good guests lined up for the rest of the week, I think. So whether they show up or not, that remains to be seen. Let's put a pin in it. Let's agree to everybody to come back tomorrow,
Yes.
and we'll dive back into more, and we'll see what that beer from tomorrow, what road does that lead us down? Because, yeah, I mean, I got to figure out how to be an influencer somehow. So
Yeah.
I gotta work my way up through the progression here.
I
So
think you're on the right track, Tom. You're on the right track.
we'll see. All right, everybody. Cheers. We'll catch you next time
Next time.
on the 12 beers of Christmas 2024. We need to change that graphic. It's not 2023 anymore.
But
We should have
this
put a
is the
slash.
slash 2024
Slash.
Wait. Yeah, see, this is why
What?
this is why
See,
we
this
drink beer.
I couldn't be a weatherman either
Okay.
because doing working on green screen. I don't know how that
There it
would
is.
how that